For more, I'm joined by one man never afraid to speak up, National Senator Matt Canavan. Matt, thank you so much for joining us this evening. I got to ask you first off, what did you make of the PM's speech today? Is it an act of hubris to be starting the counter already on The Voice when we don't even know what it will look like?
Well, it's a little bit sad for the Prime Minister when he can't even win over the sandal makers and basket weavers of the Woodford Folk Festival. And I just checked before, they actually do have sessions to weave baskets and make sandals. He can't even win them over. They're shouting him down. They're protesting about other things. They don't seem all that enthused about this voice. And I'm not surprised by that, because when I get out and around, very few people, in fact, I don't think I've ever had anyone on the street raise with me that what they think this nation needs is more politicians in Canberra. And that's exactly what you'd get if you vote for The Voice. It's more public servants, more politicians, more influence for people who like and live around Canberra, less influence for those who actually have to deal with the day-to-day vagaries of Indigenous communities every day. And that's why you've got the Nationals Party against it, I think. We're against the elite, lined up against the elite of our nation in our inner cities. In the Nationals Party, we do get regularly out to Indigenous communities. They tend to be in the electorates we represent. And we see that day-to-day, you're not going to solve these issues that exist there from a room in Canberra, people talking. Just keep in mind what this thing is called. It's called The Voice. It's not called The Action. They're not going to do anything. They're just going to talk. They're going to talk and talk and talk and get paid very well. Get paid very well by your taxes while doing so, but do nothing for the Indigenous people on the ground. That's principally why I and many of my Nationals colleagues, including the wonderful Jacinta Price, are against this impractical and unnecessary change to our Constitution.
But, I mean, Matt, there is this huge push. You mentioned the elites before. We've seen, the Institute of Corporate Directors, all of these big ASX 100 companies, all sorts of, various social welfare groups, church groups, academic groups, all saying yes on this thing. Is this going to be a replay of the 1999 referendum on the Republic, when everybody said, oh, no, this thing is a stitch-up, it's a lay-down misere because all the elites are for it, but then at the end of the day, it didn't wind up going their way?
Well, I don't know yet, James. I do think there are some differences between The Voice and the Republic. Principally, as I mentioned, very few people are engaged or care about The Voice. I would hazard a guess that if you ask 10 people down the street what The Voice is, a majority would actually say they think it's a reality TV show. And so what I am worried about here is that we are going to rush headlong into a referendum where most of the Australian people haven't given it sufficient thought before voting. And so we might not get the result that you've just potentially flagged, because some people might just go, oh, well, I suppose I'll just tick yes because I don't want to be seen as a racist, or, it's seen to be the done thing. And this is where I think the government, who is refusing to send out a booklet to people right now, so they're not going to do that like they did for other referenda. They're not. It's not even clear they're going to fund or provide any funding to the No campaign, and they're doing everything they can, I think, just to glide this through without any detail. The government's doing a real disservice. Whatever their views on The Voice is, any change to our Constitution should be properly aired before the Australian people so that a considered decision is made. And I think they're trying to avoid scrutiny by gliding this through under the radar.
And I want to shift gears now, Matt, to this news about not just the price caps we have, but now the compensation package that is being paid to Rio Tinto and its partners, around $450 million, and other power station operators are also in line with their hands out on this. Where is the money coming from? And, I mean, what are we to make of where the government is taking energy policy right now?
Well, the simple answer is the money's coming from you and your viewers. James, it's not coming from Anthony Albanese. I don't think he's got a lazy $450 million lying around just to hand over to a multinational mining company in Rio Tinto. I mean, this is shocking. And the fact that this is only coming out now, after the Greens, the crossbenchers, and of course the Labor Party conspired to shut down Senate debate on this just a couple of weeks ago, is a shocking indictment of the lack of process that this went through. This major radical legislation to put in price caps did not go to a Senate committee. It was rushed through the Parliament with less than 4 hours of debate in the Senate. And so we haven't had the opportunity to scrutinise these kind of perverse outcomes, which is just clearly ridiculous. Why would you, as taxpayers, be bailing out a multinational company to the tune of potentially, we're told in this story, maybe up to $750 million. Now, keep in mind, in the case of Rio Tinto, they made a very poor business decision a few years ago. Nothing to do with Vladimir Putin, nothing to do with the war in Ukraine, a lot to do with the woke agenda of their investor class in London. The Rio Tinto sold out of their coal mines. And so they used to need to use a lot of coal-fired power in their aluminium smelter in Gladstone just down the road. They've still got that. But they sold their coal mines. And so now when the coal price goes up, their electricity prices go up. And that's why they're suffering so much. So Anthony Albanese has come along here and bailed out Rio Tinto from a poor business decision. As I say, nothing to do with the war. And they're just sitting back. And I noticed in the paper today, the Rio Tinto declined to provide any comment. No wonder. They're just rubbing their hands. They're too busy laughing all the way to the bank. They certainly want to keep their head down and try and just cash this check.
Indeed, Matt, but I mean, you say that the Senate didn't get a chance to scrutinize the legislation. MPs didn't get to scrutinize the legislation, but I'll tell you who is scrutinizing it. It's companies like Tomago Aluminium. They're the nation's largest smelter and biggest single consumer of power, and they have issued a fresh warning over the frailty of Australia's power grid this coming winter. Look, is this just simply the deliberate deindustrialization of Australia by Labor?
I'm not sure whether it's deliberate or not. You'd like to think that even the Labor Party were wanting to see Australia succeed. I think that is still the case. But like many left of centre parties, they seem to have no idea or understanding of human incentives and think just directives from Canberra can set an agenda and make things happen. And then they often, left-wing governments then get punched in the face by reality eventually, and maybe that is going to come sooner rather than later given the hubris of this new government. Tomago is absolutely right. They're the biggest aluminium smelter in the country. Aluminium is basically solidified electricity. They have a huge amount of energy needs, and they are very scared here that this Labor government is going off-piste on their own script. The energy regulators, who I often are critical of, but they recommended a few months ago that we should support reliable power. In fact, this recommendation goes back to when we were in government, that we should create what they call a capacity mechanism, which basically just pays for the services of providing reliable power to the grid. And so it can pay anyone, it can pay renewables if they can be reliable, but often they're not, or obviously they're not. And so you end up with a system which would support coal, gas, hydro, proper hydro power coming to the system. The state governments with the federal government have rejected that recommendation. And we are going to uncharted waters then in the next few years. When the Liddell coal-fired power station shuts down next year, we could be facing a really, really tough circumstance.
Indeed. Wise words, as always, Senator Matt Canavan. Thanks for joining us.